All righty, we're going to go ahead and jump into this. Once again, thanks everybody for joining. My name is Tyler Smith. I am the Product Marketing Manager here at Powernet. Today's webinar is Beyond the Basics, Elevating Your Cybersecurity Portfolio. Just to kind of give you a rundown real quick of what our agenda is going to be today. We're going to be focusing on cybersecurity services, but real quick, we're just going to introduce Powernet for those of you who are not super familiar with us. Then we're going to dive into the cybersecurity threat landscape, and then run through how Powernet is able to reinforce the NIST framework, and then look at how we can then turn that into addressing the customer's needs. And then we'll have a short Q&A at the end of the call. Just so that way you are aware, please put any questions that come up along the way in the chat. We'll be sure to address all of those at the end. But like I said, real quick about Powernet, we were founded in 1992 in Cincinnati, Ohio. At the time, we specialized in long distance services, but over time, as the company grew and we had to adapt to changing technology trends because everyone, cell phones became a thing over time, and the world changed all around that. Our offerings exploded as well. So as a result, 60% of our workforce is in a technical role now, which is really important to us because it's their ingenuity and their creativity that really sets us apart from a lot of our competitors. Our team's ability to go in, adapt to different customer scenarios, work hands-on with them, that's really what elevates our product portfolio and the customer experience as a whole. We do consider ourselves a full service technology provider. We can service everything from voice services, which we recently rolled out a Teams Direct Routing offering that pairs very well with our Genesys contact center services. We specialize in wireless connectivity solutions, managed services, which we'll talk a little bit about, as well as a variety of cybersecurity solutions, which is what this webinar is all about. And then we also offer signal booster technology as well. But let's dive a little bit into the cybersecurity threat landscape here. So what does that look like today? The biggest thing to note is that this isn't a situation that's getting any better. The dangers out there are multiplying over time. The biggest thing is ransomware continues to evolve and adapt. It's becoming more sophisticated, more targeted. Last year, 22% of organizations were able to detect a ransomware attack. Today, just the first half of 2013 alone, that's down to 13% of organizations. This is becoming more and more difficult to detect. In addition to that, there's been a 172% increase in malware variants over the last 5 years. So just to put a number to that, that's 45,000 new malware variants that have been discovered. That doesn't even include the ones that we don't know about yet, that are probably actively infecting and attacking businesses all around the world. On average, per business, there are 54 exploitable vulnerabilities. This is really dangerous because if you think about it this way, the count of unique exploit detections, that's up over 68% over the last 5 years. Attackers are multiplying and diversifying the ways that they are exploiting various vulnerabilities. So there may be a way to get into a business, and perhaps you're able to remediate that vulnerability. Hackers are actively working on finding new ways to then work around that fix. And then from there, this one I found really interesting, and then quite honestly, it's not mentioned a lot, but removable media accounts for 60% of cyber attack entry points. That's really important because if you think about how often mobile devices are being connected via a USB port into a computer, a Mac, whatever it may be, that's triggering auto run features, and that's how the majority of cyber attacks are beginning. You combine that with phishing attacks, which make up the next 28% of cyber attack entry points. That means that 88% of all cyber attacks are the result of someone within an organization unwittingly letting the attacker in. So a lot of this is going to fall down onto not the attackers, but the internal personnel of an organization letting that attacker in. How are we combating that? That's by reinforcing the NIST framework. If you're not familiar with the NIST cybersecurity framework, this is the National Institute of Standard and Technology's outline of best practices that organizations can follow to understand, manage, prioritize cybersecurity protection in an effort to reduce their risk of a cyber attack. Powernet can support this, primarily the protect, detect, and recover portions. There are 5 total portions: identify, and respond being the others, but we focus on these 3 core aspects of the NIST framework because a lot of our service offerings that fit into these categories overlap and support the identify and respond portions of the framework. But just to explain these three a little bit further, the protect portion involves controlling who logs into a network, who's using computers, who's using devices, using security-focused software to protect any kind of data, encrypting sensitive data, whether it's at rest or in transit, conducting regular backups of data, updating security software regularly, automating those updates if possible, and training personnel who utilize network devices on cybersecurity, helping those employees understand what's their personal risk, what's their role in maintaining a secure workplace and network environment. The detect portion is a little bit more simple, where it primarily focuses around investigating and identifying any kind of unusual activity on a network or by personnel, checking a network for any unauthorized users or connections, and then in the event of a breach, determining the who, what, when, where, and why of the cyber attack, and then taking action to quarantine that threat as a follow-up action. And then the last one is recover. This typically takes place after an attack, focuses more on repairing and restoring aspects of a network that were affected, including data, applications, equipment, et cetera. And then making improvements from there to existing policies and learning and adapting from the attacks or experiences that the organization goes through as a result. So then, PowerNet's ability to protect the customer's network really begins with our managed services. A lot of the items or services that we offer in the protect category revolve around proactive services that allow us to stay ahead of any kind of cybersecurity threat. And managed services is really the base of that for every solution that we offer. So it's really important that customers understand, as we're pitching these services to them, that this all really hinges on that next level of service that the PowerNet team can provide through their managed services. Because it's not just the software that needs to be maintained, but it's everything all throughout the organization that managed services covers, such as actively monitoring a customer's devices, their network for operational health, making sure that proactive measures are being taken to resolve any technical issues, really addressing any issues before the customer realizes that it is an issue. Managing any software and firmware patches, really a lot of ongoing routine preventative maintenance. It's a lot of operating system and application patching, anything that we can do to minimize vulnerabilities across the board. That's what our team is there to do. Handling directory maintenance, authentication service management, really just making sure that only authorized users can get into the customer's network. And then firewall management. We all know that firewalls are the baseline network protection. Our team can take that to the next level by providing policy management, multi-factor authentication services, VPN capabilities. That's very important for remote workers. Data loss prevention detection capabilities. Really, that just boils down to identifying if and when sensitive data is being sent off the network. That's really important for identifying any disgruntled employees or anyone who may be taking malicious actions against an organization, and then email and web content filtering. But beyond that, our team of engineers is always available to assist with remote support tools. Really, they're there to support the customer and reduce any kind of lost productivity and bring down wait times as much as possible. Just to add a little bit of context to our managed services, we do break this out into a variety of different segments that really accommodate specific aspects of a customer's infrastructure. We offer desktop managed services, server, network, which really boils down to APs, switches, and routers, and then firewall. So that way we're able to offer this a la carte, so to speak, to make sure that customers are getting a solution tailored to them. Another proactive service that we offer is email security. This primarily revolves around email encryption through a Fortimail platform, which our team is fully certified to deploy, support, and manage as a service. This does play back into the managed services a little bit there with the firewall management. It's more of an extension of that. But the key thing here is that clients really just need to be protected beyond the basic spam filtering and other limited security tools that are native to a lot of email platforms such as Google and Microsoft 365. It is very common to come across customers who don't have any additional email security beyond that, and they don't realize just how bare bones that can be. A bit more of an outside of the box solution that we offer here in the protect portion is domain threat protection. This is essentially an application that monitors the web to protect against any spoof attacks, any identifying any potential variant or rogue domain names, primarily to identify phishing risks of a similar domain that exists. For example, this would identify if there was an organization out there that wanted to make a fake PowerNetCO.com. Maybe they went that route, but instead of a W, they used 2 lowercase v's. Very easily disguised. Some people won't catch that if you send out a phishing email that way. This is designed to catch and prevent that. If there was something that was identified along those lines, that's where the clients are then able to initiate takedown notifications and then begin proceedings against those domain threats. This also includes a dark web scan that allows for us to go in with the client and essentially identify any employee emails or credentials that may have come up for sale. So that way we can notify that employee right away, hey, we need to change your login. This is a compromised account, etc. The last 2 services that we offer really reinforce the human element of cybersecurity. The first one being employee risk assessments and adaptive learning tools. These are basically assessments that employees take to determine their tendencies and what specific types of cyber attacks they're most likely to fall victim to. As I mentioned earlier, if we look at the numbers, 88% of attacks start with someone from within the organization. This solution is a great tool for those organizations to identify who those risks are, who they might be, and then take corrective action before there's ever an issue. From there, the employees can then be assigned adaptive learning tools, which provide tailored training based on an employee's risk profile. So they're really able to get prioritized training out to those individuals, understanding that not everybody has time to sit there and take assessment over assessment, try to learn this. It really focuses on their weaknesses. And then the next portion there is phishing simulations and clickster training. I think that we're all familiar with phishing emails, how all that works. But essentially what this service is it's a routine, typically monthly testing of employees with fake phishing emails. So they're sent out to all the employees in the organization. Any employee who fails that simulation by maybe they clicked on a link or maybe they downloaded an attachment from that fake email, they'll be assigned training based off of that. This cycle is going to then repeat every 30 days until some form of improvement occurs in an effort to minimize that employee's risk on a day-to-day basis. Now, the next portion, detect, this is all about putting in place practices and policies designed to keep a business and their customer data secure when a breach has occurred. This primarily our offering that would fit into this category is Managed Detection and Response Services, otherwise known as MDR, a Security Information and Event Management, otherwise known as SIM. And then we have penetration testing, which is all about understanding what information somebody could obtain, and then vulnerability scanning, which is understanding where those weak points are within the network internally and externally. But jumping into MDR first, the main thing to get out of this is that Managed Detection and Response is essentially the modern version of antivirus software. Traditional antivirus software utilizes simple pattern recognition, while MDR utilizes advanced pattern recognition and behavioral analysis. This means that traditional antivirus can only recognize known threats, where MDR is able to identify the known and the new threats as they're taking shape. How this works is essentially Managed Detection and Response software is put out into the customer's environment. The behavioral AI maps out and monitors every running process throughout that network for malicious activity. If something is detected, whether it's a virus, malware, whatever it may be, that root cause is going to be identified, and then that software is going to automatically initiate remediation steps to isolate and quarantine that threat. So it's being taken care of before it's ever escalated up to any sort of security personnel on the IT side. And then from there, the software can initiate any sort of system rollback to make sure that systems are available to a lower risk state, practically eliminating any potential lost productivity on the employee side. Now jumping over to the SIM platform, this is different because SIM is primarily about collecting log and event data from a business's systems, their devices, their application. This data is all co-located into a centralized platform for analysis and reporting. Whenever a threat is identified by a SIM platform, that's because it is falling into a category as determined by a set of rules that the customer and Powernet can work together to determine. From there, an alert is then generated and sent off for human review. That is going to be sent to a SOC, which is a Security Operations Center, for them to quickly take action on that alert and determine if this is a serious issue that needs to be remediated, or if this is just a false flag. But essentially, this is really used for detect and control purposes. This is not a preventative tool. This is not going to be something that gets out in front of a problem. This is more for reviewing why the problem happened. How can we fix the problem going forward? Just to kind of further paint the picture around SIM for you, I have this example use case here. So picture that you have a customer. They have 10 buildings, 1,000 employees in each building. They're open 24/7, and there's over 100 doors per building with role-based access via a key fob. So everybody needs to scan a device to get into a room or a door. Now, how would anyone be able to look at all the data that's going to be generated from those thousands of employees across 10 different buildings and hundreds of doors going in and out of those doors every single day, all night? That's just nearly impossible. So then how would you find if a custodian or someone who might have access to a secure area, or that an area that might be considered a security risk, how would you ever know that somebody entered that area? Now apply that to an Office 365 environment or any other kind of cloud-based environment where there's data stored or documents stored that are being opened and shared all day, every day. This is where SIM comes in, and it's going to sift through all the noise and make sure that it's detecting the anomalies, the things that shouldn't be there. Like I said, SIM basically works off of a predetermined set of rules. So it's looking for things that are not normal, or things that we do not want to happen. We'll be able to detect if X user was able to access Y document when they're not supposed to. And then from there, as I said, the alert is then escalated up for remediation, and then action can be taken from there. And then for our penetration testing solutions, these are really designed to simulate both internal and external attacks in an effort to identify weaknesses in the client's network. First, external testing. This simulates attacks on the systems, on the customer systems that are accessible to the internet. These attacks are really targeted specifically to technologies and configurations that that specific customer uses. So it's really tailored to how that customer is going to be operating day to day. The internal testing simulates any kind of attack from within the network that could potentially be conducted by maybe a rogue employee, a vendor, or other outside attackers that were able to breach the external security and then gain access to that network. Really just understanding how they got in and what they were able to get access to, so that way organizations understand what is at risk at the end of the day. And then vulnerability scanning. This really focuses on the internal and external scans of how hackers can get into their network and what vulnerabilities they have available that can be exploited, that they can remediate before that ever happens. This primarily comes in the form of a monthly or quarterly scan that includes a trending report since the last scan, so we're able to see what existing vulnerabilities there are, what vulnerabilities have been improved, maybe which ones have grown worse over time. And then we're also able to report on what vulnerabilities have been remediated, and then identify vulnerabilities within any new systems that we want to start scanning outside of those initial scans. This service scans for over 100,000 vulnerabilities. It's easy to configure. There's nothing for the customer to download, nothing for the customer to install on their end. And it's super easy to understand. When we provide these reports, everything is risk ranked, meaning that the most exploitable or dangerous vulnerabilities that the customer has is going to be at the top of the list. And then the ones that maybe can wait or aren't vulnerabilities at all are going to be at the bottom. So that way the customer understands what they need to take action on immediately and what can wait for later on. And then, of course, this is an affordable solution. Vulnerability tests can be performed at a fraction of the cost of a full penetration test. And then the last portion of the NIST framework here that Powernet really works to reinforce is recover. These are really proactive measures put in place to mitigate any kind of productivity loss. Like I said before, recover really comes into play after a cyber attack happens. So that's where you're going to need a secure backup and a way to recover that data, making sure that you have proper backups, not just your local on-site solution and then your backup instance there. You need to have a non-domain backup, an off-site backup, something hosted in the cloud separate from your environment. And then, like I said, the disaster recovery tool to bring that down to a usable format for your organization. And then from there, ongoing cybersecurity strategy. This is the biggest thing. Without policies and plans in place, so that way employees from the top to the bottom of the organization understand what to do. This is a huge thing that organizations need to avoid an additional or a second or a third cyber attack down the road, because those cyber attacks ultimately at the end of the day are providing lessons to be learned, and it's up to the organizations to apply that. And that's where Powernet can come in and assist them in putting policies, procedures in place. But first, just to dive into the backup and disaster recovery portion of this just a little bit further, here we'll have the customer's local production. So this is essentially their native backup. This is what they're using every single day. That's pushing to a local backup. Now, in the event of a ransomware attack, all of this is going to be held hostage. The customer won't be able to access any of that. So what the backup solution that we offer does is pushes a cloud backup copy through a secure cloud gateway. That's going to ensure that there is a version of the customer's environment, all their data, all their information secured away from what could have been a compromised environment. And then from there, we're able to offer disaster recovery services. So that way, if a ransomware attack does occur, the customer's locked out of all of their data, we can have this available and accessible to them in 4 hours or less. I think the fastest one that I've seen is 4 minutes to boot back up from a recovery, which is pretty lightning fast, all things considered. So it's very important, especially in the event of a ransomware attack. Can't emphasize that enough, that there is a secure backup in place. Because at the end of the day, this could be something that takes organizations days to recover from, or it could take them under 4 hours to get back online and moving, mitigating any kind of lost productivity or lost revenues. And then from here, we have the ongoing strategy portion. As I mentioned, the human aspect of this is huge, cannot be understated, because without proper procedures and guidelines in place, you're not going to have a secure or a strong cybersecurity posture. So the first offering that we do have here is cybersecurity policies. This is where we work alongside the customer to develop a policy document to put in place to maintain a consistent security posture, making sure that people all throughout the organization, whether it's the custodians, the everyday employees to the executive suite, everyone understands the best practices, what to look for, how to respond to certain things if they're not sure if an email is a phishing email, what to do with that. That's where the cybersecurity policies come into place, really ensuring that the organization is protected from a human standpoint. And then the next level of that is the incident response planning. What does an organization do when there is a cyber attack? Do they know how to access their backup? Do they know to reach out to Powernet as their MSP if we are providing those services? That's really where that response planning comes into play, and we can help the customer develop that from the ground up. So that way, whatever attack that they're going through, they know how to respond, how to recover, and how to get everything back online and minimize any kind of lost productivity. And then the last service there that we offer is nobody wants to go through a cyber attack to learn a lesson. So we do offer services such as the tabletop exercises and the readiness assessments, which takes every solution I just talked about and puts it to the test, simulates a full-on cyber attack through a variety of different methods, through penetration testing, through social engineering, different things along those lines. And then after that, the third party that we work with that actually conducts that test comes in, and they'll review with ourselves and the customer everything that went wrong and everything that went right, and how far they were able to get into the customer's network, if at all. And then from there, it offers the perfect opportunity to upsell and help the customer understand why they need those services that much more, because had that been a real attack, they would have been in some serious trouble. So it's a great way to build a use case for a customer and generate some revenue along the way. Alrighty, so how do we take that then and then address the customer's need? Probably a better way to word that is, why do customers need these services? Why should they comply with the NIST framework? It's not required by law or anything. So why do they need that? For most organizations, it's not a matter of if, but when that cyber attack will happen. Chances are, if you checked your spam folder right now, you have been targeted by a potential cyber attack. Somebody trying to get you to click on a link or take an action that's going to take you somewhere. And like I said before, 88% of all breaches occur from somebody within the organization. All it takes is one individual to click on one link, one wrong link once, and then the entire organization is compromised. That should be reason enough for organizations to understand why they need to comply with the NIST framework, why they need these services in place to educate their employees to really minimize their risk as a whole. The other reasoning would be compliance and insurance requirements. Insuring organizations against cyber attacks has become significantly more difficult over the last 2 years alone because of the frequency of attacks, the value of data that's being lost. It's just overall becoming far too expensive for insurance organizations to provide those services. As a result of that, the requirements of businesses that businesses must meet in order to become insured has become significantly more strict. A lot of those requirements are the solutions that PowerNet's able to offer, are the policies that we're able to put in place, are the education that we're able to provide those employees. And then the last reasoning there is to minimize lost productivity. A cyber attack by itself that locks employees out of systems, out of processes, that means that nothing's going to happen. No productivity, you're going to have lost revenue. In addition to that, there's going to be overhead costs that organizations are still on the hook for. They're going to have to pay to get systems back online. They could potentially have to meet the demands of a cyber attack, especially in the case of ransomware. Those are monetary losses that add up quickly. Having a solid backup in place, having policies, procedures, knowing what to do in case that were to happen is the key to getting businesses back up and running quickly and minimizing whatever potential revenue losses that could occur. How do we identify those opportunities? We all know everybody needs cybersecurity, but who needs it the most is the question that we're looking to answer here. The first and the biggest one is going to be businesses with compliance and insurance requirements. This is a huge factor in terms of eligibility. Like I said, a lot of those requirements for insurance are going to revolve around solutions that I just talked about. A lot of customers are going to end up paying much higher premiums and much higher rates if they don't have a lot of those solutions in place. So this is going to directly impact their eligibility for cyber insurance and how much they're paying month to month on those. Additionally, as far as compliance standards are concerned, if a business is not compliant, they are at risk of potential business ramifications. For example, willful neglect under HIPAA compliance, meaning that the organization is aware that they didn't take proper action to mitigate their cyber risk and haven't made corrective action, they are eligible for penalties and fines up to $1.5 million. There's a lot of money on the line, and I know those solutions don't cost $1.5 million to get in place, so there's a monetary incentive there to make sure that there is a preventative solution in place for those organizations. The next thing that we want to be looking for is any sort of company that's still utilizing outdated tools. We're really looking for traditional antivirus, basic email filtering. Maybe they're simply just using a firewall and they think that that's enough. In today's world, cybersecurity world especially, that's just not enough to counteract the new methods that are coming out every single day. Mostly because those traditional tools use outdated databases. You're not able to stop a threat unless it's already known. And it typically doesn't cover or protect all endpoints. Physical media especially is going to be a big weak point there for a lot of those. And then the last thing that we want to look for is any organization that's recently experienced a cyber attack or a similar security breach. The big thing here is that these organizations are looking for answers. They've already gone through the cyber attack. They've already felt the pain. They already understand the need for each and every one of these solutions, and they're going to be far past the objection phase of the buying process as far as saying this could never happen to me because it already has, and they understand the need, and that should be the easiest, cleanest sale that there is. Alrighty, so some quick common questions and objections that customers might be asking. First one being, I already have an email security in place through Google or Microsoft. Why do I need these expensive services? Simply put, traditional security services lack the ability to identify most new threats and maybe even have vulnerabilities themselves that additional solutions can protect against. This is the biggest thing, and I feel like I've been beating this like a dead horse here, but old, traditional, outdated cybersecurity services just aren't going to cut it anymore. They have vulnerabilities themselves in a lot of ways, and it's important that there are multiple layers to that security stack to account for any weakness that another might have. The next question here, even if we were targeted, how bad could it be? This could never happen to me, or my data is not important. Why would anybody attack me? The biggest way to address that, illustrate how detrimental this can be to their organization. The average cost of a ransom breach in 2022 was $4.5 million, not including the ransom itself. So they may have had to pay beyond that. That's just simply lost productivity, lost revenues, things along that line. That just costs that added up for the organization while they could not conduct business as they normally would day to day. And then beyond that, organizations with less than $10 million in revenue are seeing an average cost of $165,500 per attack this year, primarily due to lost productivity. Once again, if it's ransomware, that doesn't include the ransom itself. It's not always about data. A lot of these hackers are looking for organizations that they can interrupt their day-to-day business and force them to pay some sort of fee, some sort of fine, whatever they may call it, in order to get the organization's data back. Once again, having a secure backup in place, having these solutions is the perfect way to bypass this and really ensure that there's no day-to-day interruption to their productivity and revenues. And then the last one here, my firewall and existing IT team are enough to keep my business safe. This is the biggest misconception that you'll come across. A single layer of defense and a 9-to-5 IT team is not going to cut it. Attacks happen outside of 9 to 5. People check their email outside of traditional work hours. What organizations need are a layered security stack combined with a 24/7 IT support team. This is required to effectively minimize any kind of risk and maintain a consistently strong security posture. Turnover happens, things change over time, equipment becomes outdated. It's really important that there's multiple layers to that security stack to ensure that there is continuity across the board and that things stay up to date and as secure as possible. Alrighty, so just to give everybody an idea of what the potential sales pitch would look like with Powernet, what to expect when working with Powernet from the pre-sales to post-sales. Initially, it's going to start with you, the partner, introducing the cyber capabilities. What can we do? What can we offer the client together? And then after that, bring in Powernet. We want to be able to assist you with discovery, with the presentation, making sure that everybody in the room is informed, everybody understands, and is on the same page as far as what these offerings can do and how it can benefit the client themselves. And then what we will do, we'll go back and depending on what solutions the client's looking for, if necessary, we'll pull together a scoping document and make sure that all of that is outlined so that way the customer has a clear understanding of what responsibilities fall to which parties. And then from there, we'll provide a proposal that we can send off to the customer. And then once that proposal is signed, Powernet will then schedule a kickoff call to get things started. From there, during that kickoff call, we'll establish points of contact. What's the process for getting all of these solutions rolled out and in place? And what's that timeline look like to make sure that everybody's held accountable and that we're getting things done on time? From there, we'll have follow-up meetings, just making sure that communication is continuing, making sure everybody's up to date on the latest information. And then once everything is rolled out and completed, we'll have one final call just to look back, review, make sure everything that is in place is fully operational, making sure everybody understands their role going forward in that operation of those solutions. And then we also just wanted to take a quick moment to highlight some active promotions that we have right now. As I mentioned before, we have a variety of managed services. We offer managed desktop, managed server, network, which is APs, routers, switches, managed firewall. We also offer managed vulnerability and backup management as well for organizations that maybe they want to have a backup in place, but they don't have the time or resources to manage that. Powernet can assist with that as well. If a customer were to bundle 2 or more of those managed services, they could earn a 10% discount on top of all of those. Or if they were to bundle 4 or more, we would bump that up to a 15% discount for those services. Just a way to help alleviate some of that extra costs. Like I said, that managed services is really the basis for helping all of these solutions succeed in the long run, because it really does go beyond just having software in place to detect and understand and back up solutions. It's about having a team that can actively function those, making sure that backups are put in place correctly, making sure that things are rolled out and rolled back if necessary correctly. And then if anybody has any additional questions or concerns outside of this call, this here is our channel team. So we have Penny Thurnau, our Vice President of Strategic Alliances, and Cliff Anderson, our Channel Sales Manager. Feel free to reach out to either of them with any opportunities, any questions that you may have, or if you're not sure who to reach out to, you can always reach out to agentsales@powernetco.com.